Okay, so we are back again. Not actually a big amount of time in between videos, but I kind of figured to myself I was going to walk away, but I can't stand leaving a painting looking like that. It drives me nuts. So anyway, just recently I got another airbrush. So that's my 100 side feed. This is my Sotar 2020 Slim. It's a little bit different in the fact that in there, just in there is where your paint goes. So if you look at this Iwata, I'm trying to think which one this is now, HPCS Eclipse. So normally when you're painting, you'll look down the airbrush and all you can see is this, and it always drives me nuts. Don't get me wrong, I still like my Iwata brushes, but I do have a thing for Badger, but is what it is. We'll save that chat for another day if anyone wants that discussion. But yeah, so long story short is Badger had a sale on a little while ago, so I invested in a couple of airbrushes. So this one, you look down it and you can see straight down the end, obviously by your trigger. So yeah, we're going to give this a go, and we want to start making Buddy over there start looking a little bit like that, although the backwards version of that. So what you normally want to do at this point is you're just going to go in and we're going to start adding detail. This is kind of where you got a couple of options. Let me just run through this a little bit for you. So again, looking at this skull, we've got a lot of fine details in here, going from light to grey, and again light around the edge of the eye sockets, across the top of the gums, even down here you can see where the light changes hitting the teeth and stuff. Right now, what I'm going to do is I would just want to go in and just start placing things in the right place. Once I've got stuff placed in the right place, then what I will probably do is make up a mixture. That might be the next video. We'll see how long this goes for. But for right now, I'm just going to start just by looking at this, even though I'm going to be working backwards, but hey, I love a challenge. And we're just going to start adding in the highlights and the lowlights. So general rule of thumb is you don't go in too much with black and white when you're doing this kind of stuff. You kind of want to go in with shades of grey. But for right now, I'm just going to go in with a little bit of black again, pre-mixed. Just give that a quick shake because it's been sat there a little while. First time ever using this airbrush, so I'm sure I'm going to make a mess because that's just how I roll. Oh look, it's all down the side of the airbrush. There's a shock. So obviously the downside with this is going to be the lack of paint, because it ain't ever going to hold much for paint. The plus side, oh, okay, so it's already throwing out paint on air, which is always an interesting sign. Let's try to dial that back in a little bit. Right. This is going to be fun, not having used this airbrush before. And do is just take this back off, hopefully with, oh no, okay, that's all going to come off at the same time. So I'm trying to get this thread undone just so I can push that needle forward somewhat. So now I've got it loose, we'll just screw it back up. Yeah, there's just a tiny bit of play in that needle. So I'm going to tighten that back up, ease that off slightly, and hopefully, bingo. So now it's only giving me paint on demand. We get quite a fine line with that going, because the last thing you want, if your airbrush is doing that, you push for air and it's instantly pushing paint out, that means that the needle isn't seated far enough forward. That is a recipe for disaster. Back when I was learning, I had no clue and I kept trying to paint like that for the longest time. Oh my god, what a headache. Anyway, so that aside, so I'm going to go in with some black and just start. So let's start with the biggest eye, because that'll give us a degree of confidence. So we know the edge of this eye socket is going to come up slightly. It's going to come over to there and then drop down. And we know we've got like a deep V because all skulls have that. So I'm just going to come in ever so gently. Just more than anything because I need to try and get a gist of how this airbrush works. So I'm just going to come in like that. that. And then we know the other eye socket down there kind of does the same thing. It's kind of important that you follow this line, because if you just draw or paint a line around it, it's going to look very two-dimensional. See, and that just starts that process. Again, this black is way too dark right now, but that's fine for us for right now. So we can see down there that this gets kind of wide, a lot wider than where we are at the top. And again, you just want to keep going backwards and forwards and just paying attention to how stuff works. There's almost like a little ridge there, and then it goes down. And it all kind of meets down here. So we've got a very dark spot in the very front corner of this eye, and then we've got a very light spot at the top of the nose. So if we generally follow that, we know that all of this is pretty dark. And just keep going in there, like so. And if you're struggling to keep your hands steady, you'll see I do it and most people do it. So I've got both my elbows on my bench, both hands on here, and if you really want to steady yourself, just pop a finger out, and then you can sit here and you can be really, really over the top, or OCD if you like, about making sure you're in the right area. So again, we know that's going into there. We know we've got a couple of light lines that come across the top. With luck we can get those in like that. And we know the light kind of just pinches off at the bottom there. And we know there's also a very dark spot at the top of this. Just there. So there's a dark spot there. And again, we know that this is still darker yet. We know that there's like a light section. That's why I've just left that very faint line around there, just to remind myself I need to go in and add light there. So alright, we'll come back over to this one. So looking at this, we've got a very faint sort of line that comes up. You have to excuse the squeaking noise, that's the paper doing that. So looking at here, we've got a dark patch, if you like, that starts just down here and ends up there. So from there to there, and then it goes up a lot narrower. So again, coming back, further you move back, the more mist you're going to get, so the fainter the line. So I'm just going to come up to that. And then we also know, probably one of the more important things that's going to make this look three-dimensional is that dark patch that comes out in between the eyes, because what that's going to do is make the eyes very pronounced. So let's see if we can get this line right. So this one kind of curves up. We know we've got that dark line there. That looks in the right kind of ballpark. So we know that that dark triangle comes up in around here. So, and then we know it sort of comes up, and then, oh god, that squeaking noise, comes up and you've got that dark line, and it just keeps ducking in and out where you can see like almost the veins on it. Okay, and then we know the dark patch, here come the bugs. Dark patch follows these lines. I'm not going to worry too much about this, because this doesn't match that. This is going to be one of the horns, and I'm going to be putting a horn here, but I'm going to do those near the end, because if I try and put them in now, it's going to make it more confusing than it needs to be. So we know that the dark patch, oh my god, that noise. So we know that dark patch is very thin here, and then we know that, oh, we're getting bubbles in the airbrush, which is never a good sign. That's normally a sign of a little bit of tip dry going. You can see the bubbles in there. That's in our little reservoir. So what's happening is the paint is getting stuck at the end of the needle, and you'll see a lot of us will do this. You'll just grab it between your fingers and do that. We'll give her a quick spray, and she's spraying again. Good. That explains why I was having the problem there. So, oh, and now see, see, it's a good thing we got the camera going. So what I've done is I've just cleaned that, and I left paint on the needle. Again, big stress? Not really. Just bite the bullet. Let it dry out. Again, we're just pushing for air to dry everything out. Okay, so I'm not going to pay any attention to that because the amount of levels we're putting into this, or layers. Okay, come up here. Okay, so now we're just trying to replicate this somewhat to start off with. So now the back of the skull, sorry, hopefully you can see that. So at the back of the skull we've got that dark line, and that runs all the way round. So we can go ahead and throw that in right now. Okay, and we can see it follows down to that jawline. I'm not going to attempt to even do this with the black, where you've got the little piece of bone there sticking out. We'll just do it all in there black for now. And just by cutting that corner off like it is there, again, it starts to give that three-dimensional look. All the way up over the top. And again, use your reference point so you know that it's dark, 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 it's skinny, 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 and the narrowest point is just in line with the edge of his eye there. So just up there where I've stopped. We'll just emphasize that a little bit for now. Okay. Right, where should we head to next? So we've got the eye. So let's have a go at doing this section here. This is probably going to be a little bit tricky, but again, don't over complicate it or stress yourself about it. Try and keep your reference somewhat close. Right, so we know that this line is nothing like the eye socket. We know that it goes thicker at the top, narrower at the bottom. We know that for a fact, and we can see where it curves over. We know that curve almost starts just above the eye, so we know that that is just there. So let's start with that curve. And again, all we're doing, we're starting to add the shadow in. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to say, yeah, it's not too bad, but it's still not quite in far enough. We'll come in a little bit more. Okay, now I've started that and I've done it in line with the eye, so I already know, for argument's sake, I'm not in the right area. So, knowing that that line there is roughly right, we're just going to come up here. Okay, so now we know that that's roughly in the right ballpark. Again, we're not looking for perfect, not right now, because you can add as many layers as you want to something like this. What you're trying to do is just get everything, all the proportions in the right place. So I'm just going to come down here. We know that this line is fairly jagged because it's kind of just the edge of the eye socket. Alright, and then we know down here, we can see it starts just before the edge of the eye, it starts to come out that way. So we're going to come out that way, like it does. My airbrush has got a bit of tip dry again, so we'll do the same trick, just off to one side. And again, if you're working on this, there's nothing stopping you. See, look, see there's that paint coming out. Just come back and do that. Okay, so we know we've got a good clean nozzle again. Okay, so let's look at this a little bit closely. So we know that that comes out, and that top line there, where that edge is, we know that that's almost level. So that bit that I've done there is a little bit too high. Oh, we got a spider. Okay. Again, not stressing about that right now. So then we know this cheekbone then comes down, and now we can start using our other reference points. So we've got this gap in the jaw that I actually cut out, so we painted that black. So it's almost like drawing with numbers at this point, because we're going from there down to that edge. So we're going from there down to there, and it's going to go down to the bottom inside corner. We can just roughly throw that in. Right, so now that's there, we know that that line is going to be somewhere in the right ballpark, because we've got that edge which meets the bottom of the eye, and that goes down to that bottom corner, and it's there. And this is what I mean about just cutting out certain parts so you can get all of your stuff where it needs to be, so to speak. As weird as that sounds, but yeah. Okay, so let's come around here. So the edge of the bottom of this eye socket, you can see we've got a bunch of light and dark going on, so I can safely just start dusting in the middle up to the edge of the nose in a dark colour. Again, nothing too crazy with this right now. Gently take it in, making sure we don't lose that eye line. Okay, so this is where it's going to get a little bit more technical. So we know that obviously the nose cavity, or nose hole if you want to make it sound funny, that's black obviously. So around this edge we've got a very dark line where it comes in, so we can put that in. Okay, where are we? So we're there, and then it comes down and it starts to meet these teeth. So again, a bit of a road map going on. So we've roughly got that one in place. So now, what I like to do is I'll work on everything in and around and up to the mouth. Just because I find that's the easiest way. So let's have a look at the jaw. We know we've got a couple of random lines coming down this way. There's a dark spot just there. It's generally dark around the bottom edge. Okay, and we've got a big dark patch here. So again, use your reference point, so we know that that is the left hand side of the nose, and that is just past that, so we know that that is actually that tooth there. We know that for a fact, and then we can come down and we're like, okay, directly in line with that is the edge of that dark line, and it's going to come off that way. So again, we'll come down here. So where are we? We are there. So we're there, so that is that tooth, which is that tooth there, and we know that is that line. Right, so there we go, back to two hands again, and we can see that there's a very light line across the top of the gum. That's going to be a bit tricky to do. You could even do it with a paintbrush. I'm a bit stubborn like that though. I'll probably try the airbrush. Make sure we've got some fine lines going on, which we do. Okay. So we are taking that. So we're doing this piece here. That's probably more than dark enough for that for now. What we can do is we can just add in this again, so it gives us a bit of a reference point. That one starts here and just works its way down. So, and then off the bottom of that corner, like so, and come back to here, and we know we've got a really dark patch past this line. Again, I'm not going to go too crazy with the dark for now. This is more about, you'll reach a comfort point where you're doing this and you'll be like, okay, now it's starting to take shape, and you can go back in and grab details. So let's start adding some of these gum lines in, at least a little bit, so we've got a rough ballpark of where everything is. So we'll start in this back corner. So even though we cut this out, actually I'll probably show on this one a little bit more. So again, looking at where that one is, we actually missed that. He's got a double chin, poor guy. Stuff like that sticks out, because then you're like, oh, okay, that's definitely in the right place. Anyway, so looking at this, where this patch here is very, very dark. So I'm just going to feather this in, just so it's not quite so much of a harsh line. Just feather it in a little bit, just so you kind of lose the harshness of it. Alright, and we know we've got a bunch of teeth. As soon as this comes in, we've got a tooth on the end, and again, dark line to the gum, dark line to the gum, and all the way across. This is where you don't want to rush, you kind of want to keep track of it because you want the right amount of teeth. So we'll start on the first one, and we know that there's a small gap there, and this is probably, looking at the way that I cut this, this is right here. So, a bit too dark and a bit too thick, but anyway. So coming off this bottom line, this is pronounced off of here. And open this out. Oh, she's not playing again. There we go. So we know that that is kind of coming off of that same line where the cheekbone is. So when you look at that and you think, oh, hang on, oh, and then it all makes sense. So we know that that's pretty dark in that corner, and this is kind of where all of the arching goes down. So what we'll do, let's come back up to here a minute. Let's go under the nose. So going under the nose, we've got the two biggest teeth. Those two biggest teeth, so you've got two there and then two very small ones on the outside. And then we know that goes right up to the edge of the image. So we know that these teeth are in this area. So what it is, we know that this comes down to a point, like that. And we know that we've got a gum line there. Now, there's a couple of different ways we can do this. We can actually draw the gum in, which I might do. Or you can just keep adding the light and the dark. At some point you're going to create that line, whether you know it or not. So, and again, over here, what you can do is, if we come over to the right hand side of the nose, we know that we've got, again, those lines coming down to the teeth and the gums, and we know that there's one right on that edge. So we already know that we've got a tooth coming down there, which is met by another line there, which is met by another line there. Right, and we now know we're about here, so we're in the middle of the tooth. We know that comes down right in between two teeth. So what I'm going to do, because I want to make sure that we've got the right kind of spacing off the middle of that nose, I'm going to come down. I'm literally going to do that all the way down, because I now know between there and there I've got to fit 1, 2, 3 lines in for teeth. So again, we'll come back across here. Let's say we'll pick the corner of the nose. So straight off the corner of the nose is one that comes straight down as well. So that's got to be that gap there. Has to be that gap there. So we already know that is that one. So again, we'll look at this one, and we know that that is coming down to a point there, and we know that there's an edge of a tooth there. Again, we come back again, so we know that there's a bit of a point there, so we know that this is the next tooth. I'm going to move on to 2 hands. Okay, we know that one's there, and again we can carry on down this line now looking at the teeth, but make sure we're paying attention to that arch. That's probably a bit straight, that last one I did, so we'll just arc that off that way, arc that one off that way, and again, the more we go down, the more this becomes a thing, right up to where that line is there. So what I'm going to do is, so now I'm going to come back up to the edge of this eye. We know that that's really dark in that spot, so and by putting this nice big chunk of black in there, it means I can then come back when I'm doing the white and I can make that really stand out then. We're going to pronounce a little bit. See, and I can already feel myself wanting to do the white because I know that that's dark and that's a lot lighter, but they both look the same right now. So, and again, you can even go at this point, you can start going in and adding bits of black and yada yada yada. Depends on where your skill set is and how you want to approach it. And again, you just keep on paying attention to where all these indents and lines are, and just keep following your roadmap. Right, so again, we'll come back to this, and we can see even to the point there's a pronounced line there. So again, we're pretty a little bit on the dark side with the paint right now, but so again, comes off of there, just past the bottom of that corner. Comes right the way down, and then what we're looking to do is start turning this into looking one piece. So I'm just going to come back, make sure some paint coming out. Just going to start doing that. So we can see now, even though the teeth aren't there, you can see it's starting to take a bit of dimension to it. Just for visual reference, I'm going to start trying to put a few of the teeth in. So that the main thing that you're looking for with the teeth is you want to make sure that they're the right height. Because if you get them too small, too big, it's never going to look right. So again, if we look at the middle gap, this is part of the reason that's in there, because that gives me exactly where they're meant to be. So we know that that's the middle there. So if we look at this roughly on height, you can see, you can measure it as well, is another good way, but if we look at that, that's basically half and half. So I know that the gum ends just about there because we know that it's roughly half the distance. So you can even go to the point, and I'll make a point of doing this. Let's say we go, airbrush is going to play, there we go. And again, paying attention to that line. So when you look at the picture, the gum line is staying pretty straight. When you're doing some skulls, you'll see it'll curve that way. Playing ball again. Or I'm out of paint. Oh, nearly out of paint. Come back here, and you see that gum line definitely carries on. So, and again, same for the bottom. So we'll look down here, again we'll look for our reference point. So we know that these teeth here, they kind of fade off into the distance and just slightly arc around, but we know it has to be somewhere in the region of where that black line is. And now it's just starting to take shape. So, oh yeah, that was the end of the paint as well. So I'm going to go away and let that dry for a little while and upload some videos. If you wonder what the frig I'm doing, go back to the previous video. If you want to see more, go on to the next one.